Hi, I'm Sejal. I'm an industrial designer, and today we're going to talk about designing for assistive tech. Some of the main things we're going to cover is what is co-design and who are co-designers, and how to interview and talk to co-designers. So, what is co-design? Well, whenever we're designing a product, might it be digital or physical or a service, we follow design thinking, which involves empathy for the user, defining the problem, ideating, prototyping, and testing your ideas. However, we're going to follow the overall design thinking in this project as well for the 80 challenge. But instead of designing product for our users, co-designer is about designing with the user, and we're not going to have a big target audience. The project is only going to be for the co-designer, and you're going to actively collaborate and participate with the co-designer in this project, which is going to help us dive deeper into their lives and the problem space and come up with the product or a solution that is actually going to help them. So co-designing for 80, the 80 challenge, why are we doing that? Well, co-designer term here not only emphasizes on their active participation, but also acknowledges their own domain expertise and how they carry out their own lives. Well, this knowledge is especially important in the context of disability because different disabilities manifest in different ways, and people have very individual adaptations that they might be used to. And this is not only applicable to people with disabilities, but there might be, like, if you think about it, certain tasks that you might carry out differently from your friend or your mom or anybody else. So every person adapts to different tasks differently. And that is why we want to focus on just one individual for this project, because we believe, or co-designing believe, one size does not fit all. Um, However, we do believe that certain patterns and principles can be applied in different ways with different people. But in this project, we were going to focus on just one product for one user. And the most important thing here is that co-designers make decisions in this project, not just suggestions. So when we're testing, when we're ideating, when we're researching, we have to keep in mind whatever the co-designer feels and their insights into the project. To give you a little more context, like I put a few memes here. One size does not fit all, like it's quite evident in this meme as well. So what does that mean for your project? Well, when we're finding a co-designer in this project, or whenever you're finding, what are you doing in this project, you can maybe, for example, focus on Tony, who has mobility difficulties from cerebral palsy and wants a better way to use an umbrella. Or Tony and his sister, who want an easier way to help lift Tony into the car. But then you should not be designing for people with mobility issues at large, because here we're categorizing people with mobility issues. And then again, mobility can be issues can be caused because of different disabilities. So we want to focus on one user and a specific problem that they're having, instead of having this really broad target audience and like broad set of problems. So why co-design? Why not use the other design thinking process or the other processes in this project? So the key things we need to keep in mind is that we can't put people into boxes, as disabilities can be complex, intersectional, and lead to stress, pain, and anxieties. So if we come up with as an assumption that you think might be applicable to multiple people, but it's not actually true, since accessibility is vital in centering the needs of disabled people, but inclusion takes more than just standard compliance. And we want this project or this challenge, the product that you come up with this at the end of this project, um, to actually help your user to make a difference in their lives, instead of us making assumptions. We want to dive deep into the person's life and come up with a solution that's going to make a difference. So why are we doing co-design if, you know, well, co-design isn't always useful or possible in a lot of situations when we're designing large scale products, or like products designed for a huge population. But then the skills that gonna learn in this co-design process are very transferable to the general product design and engineering. And with co-design in this project, you're going to come up with the solution, like I mentioned before, that's going to actually help your user at the end of the challenge. So when finding a co-designer, some key things that we want you to keep in mind is that you need to actively collaborate with your co-designer. So make sure you can meet your co-designer to brainstorm, test, to get feedback about your product, and also focus on a specific problem space instead of an overall solution. Like I mentioned before, we're going to focus on Tony and his specific action, or whoever your co-designer might be, instead of focusing on mobility issues in general. Maybe it's about getting him upstairs. So be sure whenever you're starting with the project to define the scope of scope of the project. Some other things to keep in mind is that co-designers' feedback is extremely valuable, but they, just like you, just like me, don't know everything. So it's all about ideating, it's about testing, it's about researching, and it's about failing. Large part of design, when you come up with the final solution, is about testing, iterating, and failing, because the best way to learn is to fail. So we're gonna make sure that we the product, you're working on the product with the user, but we still have certain they also don't know everything. So that's something we just need to keep in mind. And we're just learning, so have fun with this project. The other key thing is that be respectful of your co-designer's information. Be sure to ask your co-designer what information they're okay with putting in public, including names, descriptions of conditions, living situations, pictures, videos. And if they're not okay putting their name in the public, that is completely fine. You don't have to disclose their name for the sake of the project. You can still work with them, collaborate with them, and put other information about the condition and how the project's going to help them, but you don't have to disclose their name. Other things, talking to your co-designer, some interviewing tips. Whenever you're having an interview, it's important to have empathy. And as you're starting the project, you should always start with introducing yourself, the project, the purpose of the interview, the purpose of this research, and take consent and thank them if they're okay with sharing that information, and thank them for their time. Other key things is that before you conducting the interview, it's important that you conduct some secondary research on the problem space so that you're not asking them questions that are, available on the internet. And you come up with an interview guide with specific questions designed that are catered towards your co-designer, which is actually going to help you navigate through your project, or it's going to help you with your project. But it's not just basic questions that you can find on the internet. In this case, but in general, otherwise, a key thing is to have empathy for the person you're interviewing, because you're talking about someone with about their difficulties, and they're taking out the time to help you with your research and your project. So it's important that you're having empathy towards their problem, and you need to be more responsible. Like it is important to acknowledge what the co-designer is answering. So a good way could be just like nodding your head, or asking follow-up questions, or just paraphrasing. Like if they said something, just paraphrase and acknowledge what they said, and just be human. They're not talking to a machine. They're human, we're human, and we need to have more empathy towards the person we're interviewing. And it's always good to ask follow-up questions and open-ended questions. It's always better so that we get good content from the answers to ask open-ended questions instead of asking questions that might have a yes and no answer. And just ask general questions in the beginning of the interview. Make the interviewee feel comfortable having a conversation with you. So it's more of a conversation instead of them just filling out this, or just having this mechanical conversation. That's all. And if you guys have any questions, reach out to any of the MIT Beaverworks AT staff, and we would love to help you. And we're excited to see what you come up with at the end of the challenge. Thank you.